Oh look, it's our old friend, the cursed Macintosh SE30. If you haven't had the pleasure of meeting our favorite recurring villain yet, we found this thing on Craigslist, already in this heavily modified state, with a CD-ROM and a 1GB Jazz drive hacked into it. But the mods weren't exactly built with durability or fire safety in mind, so we've spent the past few months working to build it back up to the best version of the original modder's vision. We've been steadily fixing all of its little gremlins, we added a few mods ourselves, and we even called in a few favors with friends. Unfortunately, I think all these mods are taking a toll on the aging, weak original power supply. So today, let's see if we can exorcise this final part of the curse by hacking in a modern 300 watt power supply. So stay tuned. Today's Macintosh shenanigans are brought to you by PCBWay. So many retro computing projects that we've come to depend on started with prototyping via PCBWay.com, in no small part due to their great pricing and turnarounds as fast as 24 hours. Just take a look through their shared project sections where you can find absolute gems like this amazing entire Apple I clone, so if you have any PCB needs, I hope you'll give PCBWay.com a try. So this month, I'm joining a bunch of other content creators in Macintosh, where we're doing a month-long March of the Macs, celebrating everything pre-Intel Macintosh, following in the footsteps of fun events like Septandy and DOScember. And I have something really special planned for the cursed Mac. In fact, an extremely rare upgrade is on its way here from Germany right at this very moment. But before we can even think about installing it, we really need to figure out this power problem. Oh, and if you've been following the cursed Mac saga for a while, you might notice that our replacement CD-ROM drive is now a very pleasing shade of blue. This was heavily requested by all of you because the original broken drive was painted blue too, so I thought this was a great place to test out the paint that I bought. And I think it came out really well, although it's a little bit shiny, so I did also get a matte clear coat paint, which I think I might take this apart again and give it a coat of that matte clear. Now, onto this screen. This little guy's screen has been quite flickery and jumpy since the day I brought him home, and I was hoping a recap of the logic board would fix it, which was performed by none other than Steve from Mac84. Check out the stream of that repair here. But alas, the problem persists, even with none of the drives connected. And from everything I've read, that's a symptom of a failing power supply. So my first thought was to recap the existing power supply. But with all of this stuff plugged in, plus the upgrade that's coming, I don't think that old-fashioned 75 watt power supply would be strong enough to be reliable. So let me introduce you to one of my favorite YouTube channels, JDW. I'm pretty sure I've mentioned his channel in the past too, but JDW does a ton of comprehensive modding and repair videos on classic Macs. I'll put a link in the description below. In one of his videos, he and the crew from 68K MLA put together a foolproof guide to adapting a modern ATX power supply to vintage Macs. And although many different models of PSU have been used successfully, JDW went with a Seasonic 250 watt unit due to its size and features. And he goes into great detail on why in his video, so I definitely recommend checking that out. Now, I found a good deal on this 300 watt version, which is way overkill at 4 times the original power of the stock SE30 power supply. So let's adapt this for the SE30, and we'll differ just a little bit from what JDW did. Then we'll test it out and see if it solves the screen's flickering issue. Alright, let's tear this thing all the way down to the analog board and pull out the power supply. Yeah, so as you can see, this is kind of a gigantic mess of wires in here right now, thanks to all of the SCSI connections that we need to make for the Jazz drive and the SCSI to SD and the CD-ROM drive in here. And they're all running off of just one Molex connection to the analog board here and a whole bunch of Molex splitters, which is not ideal. So hopefully we're going to take care of that with that Seasonic power supply, which will have an extra Molex power connector and a floppy power connector on it. So we won't have to rely on just this one on the analog board. So since we're dealing with the analog board, we do have to disconnect the CRT, which means we should really discharge it. And disclaimer, this is high voltage stuff, so you really should know what you're doing before you start messing with this, but I'm just going to discharge the CRT to ground. And I'm going to do just a little bit of a disassembly montage here. If you want to see how to do this for real, again, check out JDW's video linked below. And I just noticed this analog board has definitely been off before because all 4 screws that hold it in are different. There are 3 random Phillips head screws and then 1 flathead screw. So that's fun. Thank you, previous modder. And what was I saying? Of course this analog board has been out before. Just look at this madness. They hacksawed right through this, and I think they sanded it down a bit because it's not sharp, but yeah, this poor Sony power supply, they hacked a huge chunk of it off so that the CD-ROM could fit in and slot, technically slot inside of the power supply. Yeah, and I guess when they spray painted this knob, they didn't bother taking it off. They just spray painted it directly on the board here because there's blue spray paint all over the analog board. So yeah, as you can see, there is quite a difference in size between these 2 units. This Seasonic unit is absolutely tiny compared to the Sony. So what I'm going to do is what a lot of other people have done. I'm going to take apart this Sony power supply, and I'm just going to mount this little unit as a whole inside the casing for here, and then run the power jack from this original power jack to the Seasonic. So yeah, I don't see anything in here that's scorched or leaking or what, maybe a little bit here, but I do see this piece of duct tape that the previous modder put in there. So yeah, I guess no big surprise that this power supply seems to be having some issues. And yeah, this will fit in there quite nicely and leave lots of room for the CD-ROM drive. Okay, so now we have to map the wires from this mess to this small connector here. And what I'm going to do is just remove this connector to reuse it and just map a couple of these wires, which everything on here exists here, and this just has a lot more stuff on it. And just like JDW had, I have this handy chart here to let me know which wires on the new old SE30 connector I actually need from here. So this follows standard ATX color codes. This does not, of course, but black is ground and black is ground here. So I just need to take the couple grounds and then these other 4 wires shown on this chart and it should be good to go. And then I'll just snip off the rest. And the other cool trick from the JDW video is the use of these staples as a tool to remove the wires out of these connectors. So instead of having to redo the connections, we can take a staple and cut a staple in half and use that to shimmy out the connector. Ta-da! So yeah, a little bit tedious, but it gets the job done. All right, so there's our salvaged connector, nice and pristine, and that's the end of our broken, horrible Sony power supply that's been mangled. Look, here's some more duct tape. It's definitely been mangled by the previous owner. So on here, I basically just want to leave this Molex adapter if I can, and then we're just going to take all the wires out of here and put the appropriate ones into here and have a working adapter, and then just remove the rest of them. And this green wire here, which is the power on wire, just needs to be put to ground so that it's always powered on when the switch is turned on. Okay, and here's the new cable that I've come up with, and as you can see, it is a lot like JDW's version. The only real difference being that I kept this Molex and floppy connector on here, and here is our original SE30 power connector, and yeah, all of the cables seem correct, and I am pretty confident in this. Then I have the green wire here connected to ground to make a loop back so that as soon as you plug in power, the power adapter will turn on, and then I just need to connect the switch from the SE30's original chassis to the Seasonic power supply. But yeah, let's test this out first. And yeah, I think we'll plug it into power and just make sure nothing explodes. Have you ever been entirely confident that you've done everything correct and still incredibly nervous to actually plug something in? Because that's how I feel right now. I am quite certain that I have followed all the instructions and double checked all of the wires and looked at the schematics, double and triple checked everything. But yeah, I'm still worried that as soon as I plug in power, this thing's going to explode. But better it explodes now on my nice anti-static mat instead of inside the SE30 itself. Here goes nothing. All right. Nothing exploded. No smoke, no smell. I say we test this by plugging in a drive to the Molex connector and see if it's giving power. Okay, this is a broken drive out of a G5. So let's see if it gets power when we plug it in. Hey, it's alive! And I guess I left a CD in here a long time ago. Alright, it seems to me that we have done everything correct here. We've wired this new harness appropriately, and we're getting power out of the original Molex. So, next step, let's plug this into the analog board and just make sure nothing explodes. Okay, so I just want to start out with a caveat that this is not safe what I'm doing here, because there's lots of exposed stuff. So if you're doing this kind of testing, be extremely careful, and I have no liability for anything that happens to you or your board if you're doing such testing as this. Now, I've got the power supply new connector here, and we'll plug that into the board. Fits perfectly, of course. And then I have our drive hooked up to the board's Molex connector here. And when I give this power, it should power up this board, and then it should allow me to open the DVD if everything's working appropriately, or something on here will explode. Here we go. Drive powered up. And the drive opens and closes. Our Seasonic power supply is working. We are now powering this board from this brand new modern power supply. Excellent. Okay, so now the question becomes how to mount this in here and still be able to pass through the power switch and the power plug mounted on this bracket chassis deal here. When I watched JDW, he simply soldered from the switch through to the back of the power jack on the Seasonic, kind of bypassing here. And my first thought was to actually plug a cord into here and then cut the cord off and solder the wires to the cord and then the ground to the ground over here. But there's not quite enough room inside here to do that. the cord would have to come out here, and it's about maybe half an inch too short. I'm going to try to do what he did. I'm going to solder the wires from the switch down here into the back of the power jack and the Seasonic, and then ground to ground, so that this switch will cut the power from this power jack to this power jack basically, and from the outside function exactly as if this was a stock power supply. So to do so, I guess I'm going to have to take the circuit board out of the Seasonic to be able to access the back of the power port here, and not too big of a deal, so let's do that now. All right, those wires are in there pretty good. Time to put the power supply back in and make sure it doesn't blow up. Okay, so here we go. The deed is done. I have soldered all the wires in place to bypass the power jack here and connect it to this power jack and the original SE30 switch. I've also remounted the Seasonic through the holes in the Sony power supply, and I was able to mount it at 3 points, so that's not going anywhere. And I have a whole bunch of kind of double stacked heat tubing in there, so that should prevent anything from shorting, and there's nothing exposed that wasn't exposed before, so I think we've done it. It was kind of a pain to get inside here to bypass the jack. I had to take the board out, and it was still kind of tight to solder, but yeah, everything's in there solid, nothing is coming apart, so I think it looks pretty good, and I'm just going to leave this without the Seasonic top on it. Again, just like JDW did. But yeah, I think, why don't we plug this into power and see if this SE30 switch works, and see if I wired anything in wrong and this thing explodes. All right, here we go. No smoke. All right, let's do the DVD-ROM test. All right, here we go. It worked. It's alive. Oh man, we did it. Right now it's off. And now it's on. I can't believe we did it. We got it. It works. I'm genuinely shocked that I didn't mess anything up here, even though I was extremely cautious about which wire went where. But we did it. This power supply is alive, and this brand new Seasonic is now connected to the original SE30 switch and SE30 power jack. So when we put this machine together, it's going to look stock. Well, as stock as a cursed Mac SE30 can look anyway. Okay, next test. Will this power the analog board? And I have it nice and secured, so let's plug in the connector. And I've got the DVD-ROM plugged into the Molex on the analog board here. So we'll see if the DVD-ROM comes on, and we'll see if the fan comes on. Hey! Fan is on, and the drive works. We are in business. All right, let's put this thing back together and see if all of these shenanigans solved our flickering screen issue. All right, well, it's all back together, and here's the deal. Whether this works first try or whether this fails miserably and completely explodes and I destroyed it, I'm still going to put this video up. So put your guess in the comments below. Do you think this worked first try? Or do you have no faith in me whatsoever and you think this is going to completely fail and explode in a puff of black smoke? So put your guesses in now, and we're plugging it in. Hey, it did the funny chime, so that's a good sign. Oh my god, it works. Oh, and it's so bright now too. I honestly cannot believe it. This worked. First try, all of those shenanigans, and we got that power supply in there. And it's booting up and the screen looks stable. There is no crazy flickering. Honestly, this is so much brighter than it was before. So this is all the way up. Before it was about here, I think, which is halfway. So this new power supply makes a huge difference. I am so unbelievably excited about this. You have no idea. All right, let's see. CD-ROM drive. That works, and the CD-ROM is the only thing that I have actually powered off of the analog board itself. The Jazz drive does blink. I have that powered off of the Seasonic power supply directly, and the same with our audio here and our SCSI SD. I do have it plugged into the floppy power connector because why not? But yeah, I feel like the audio is much louder, and the screen is it's so unbelievably bright now. Why don't we check out our Simpsons video?
Take off! Take a memo on your Newton! Beat up Martin!
And of course that audio is going through that audio amplifier that we put in this video right here just a couple of weeks ago, and that is connected again directly to the Seasonic now and not fighting for power with all the other crazy stuff that's hacked into this machine. So yeah, I'm so unbelievably excited. Okay, so I've had it running for a while, and one thing that I noticed is the fan in the power supply is rather audible. Here, take a listen. I'm not sure how well that'll come across on the microphone here, but it's definitely audible and pretty annoying in person, so we'll probably have to switch that out for a much quieter fan like a Noctua. But for now, let's put this through its paces and make sure everything works and we don't get any more screen flickers under load. So first, let's test out the CD-ROM drive with this, the CD that came originally with the cursed Mac, stuck in the original broken CD-ROM drive. All right, there it is. Mounted real quick right on the desktop. SE30 stuff. Let's try a Jazz disc at the same time. All right, Jazz drive is spinning up. And it's mounted the Jazz disc. I don't even remember what I put on here. Now we've got a bunch of movie tests and some games, and oh yeah, when I was trying to play MP3s on here, which we might be able to do with the upgrade that's on its way from Germany. Hint, hint. But yeah, why don't we try copying a file from the CD to the Jazz disc? All right, let's copy Microsoft Flight Simulator. No problem at all. Let's try copying a couple files. Again, no issue at all for this Mac. Man, I'm so excited that this power supply works. I really did not think I was going to get it first try. And the screen is super stable. Everything works. It's a little noisy, but we can fix that. So yeah, JDW, thank you so much for your incredible content. It is really a gift to our community modding these old Macs, because I never would have been able to do this without your videos. So yeah, this is a heck of a start to our Macintosh celebrations. Hopefully our next video will also include this cursed Mac, which is now honestly no longer cursed, just so long as the parts I'm waiting for do get here from Germany. But in the meantime, if you like this video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more Macintosh shenanigans like this, please subscribe down below, and thank you very much for watching.
Well, to create a new standard, it takes something that's not just a little bit different. It takes something that's really new and really captures people's imagination. And the Macintosh, of all the machines I've ever seen, is the only one that meets that standard.
And a special thanks to Justin, Chris, Frutk Mods, Sorta Eclectic, and Spike, who are my highest tiered patrons, and all of my Patreon supporters for helping make these videos possible.